Hi Flashes! So today we are going to be talking about two-step inequalities. So we spent the past couple of days talking about one-step inequalities. So just like equations, we have one-step, two-step, and multi-step. So today we are going to talk about two-step. So just like solving an equation, okay, you always want to move the number that's on the same side as x, but not attached to the x. So in other words, we're moving our constant, and we are moving it by using inverse operations, okay? But before we move on to two-step, let's go ahead and review one-step. So remember one-step, we just have one step to get our final answer. So if we want to get x by itself here, we need to move the constant that's on the same side as x over to the other side. And to do that, right now it's adding 6, so if I want to move it, the opposite of adding 6 is subtracting it. So your plus 6 minus 6 cancel because that equals 0. You're left with x, and then remember we're not doing equal sign anymore because that's equations. We have an inequality symbol, so I just need to drop down that inequality symbol. So this is a less than symbol. And then 15 minus 6 will give me 9. Alright, so next one. Remember when a number is shoved up next to a variable, we have a coefficient, so that means that it is multiplying. So if I want to move the 5 over to the other side, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I would divide by 5 on both sides. So my 5's cancel because that equals 1. And I'm left with x is, bring down that greater than sign, x is greater than 8, because 40 divided by 5 is 8. Okay, next one, so we have x minus 9 is less than or equal to 2. So same thing, I need to move the constant that's on the same side as x. So in this case, I need to move the 9. Right now it's subtracting 9, so the opposite of subtracting 9 is adding 9. So I want to do that to both sides of my equal sign. So your minus 9 plus 9 cancel because that equals 0. You're left with x is less than or equal to, and then 2 plus 9 is 11. All right, and this last one, so x over 7, remember that fraction bar means divide. So if I want to move that 7 over to the other side, the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So you're going to multiply that 7 on both sides. So these 7's cancel because that equals 1. And you're left with x is greater than or equal to, and then 8 times 7 is 56. Okay, now these didn't have graphing, but just so you guys know, we will be talking about graphing inequalities again, but with our two-step equations, we will definitely be graphing. Okay, all right, so that's a review on one step. So notice how we just had one step to get to our final answer. And also notice that there were no negative signs here. Okay, so remember the rule is when you multiply or divide by a negative, you flip your inequality sign. So please do not forget to do that. So all of these examples up here were all positives. So we did not have to flip any inequality sign, but whenever we come to some negatives down here, if we multiply or divide by a negative, then we need to flip that inequality sign. Okay? All right, so let's try this one. So remember, two-step equations, you always want to move the constant that's on the same side as x. So that's going to be the number not attached to the x. So first number that we need to move is this 17. And look at the operation before it. If it's subtracting 17 and I want to move it over to the other side, the inverse operation of subtracting is adding. And if you guys want to draw your line, you're more than welcome to. I know some of my students like to do that. So your minus 17 plus 17 cancel because that equals 0. We are left with 3x. And remember, there's not an equal sign anymore. You're going to keep that inequality sign, so it's greater than or equal to. And then 4 plus 17 is 21. All right, and then our last step to get x by itself is to get rid of this 3. So since the 3 and the x are multiplying right now, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. And then I always tell my students, whenever you get to this last step, did we divide by negative? No, so we are not going to flip our inequality sign. So our answer is going to be x is greater than or equal to, and then 21 divided by 3 is 7. Okay? So when I go to plot this on my number line, whatever answer I get is going to be this middle number on my number line. Okay, so 7 is going to be right there in the middle. And then if I were to keep filling in my number line, one number to the right of 7 is 8, and then the next one would be 9, and then the number to the left of 7 going backwards is 6, and then the one right before that is 5. Okay? So first thing, decide whether we are going to have an open or a closed circle at 7. Well, it's going to be closed because if there's that equal line, then it's going to be a closed because it can equal 7. And then if we want all numbers greater than or equal to 7, which way are numbers greater than 7 on the number line? To the right, correct. So we're going to shade in an arrow to the right, and that will be our graph. Again, you guys can pause this video at any time, but I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next one. All right, so number 6. First number that I need to move is my constant that's on the same side as x. So in this case, I need to move that 5. So right now it's subtracting 5. So the opposite of subtracting 5 is adding 5. Your minus 5 plus 5 will cancel. So we are left with x over 3 on the left side. Bring down that greater than symbol, and then 4 plus 5 is 9. And then our last step to get x by itself, right now, remember this fraction bar line means dividing, so if I need to get rid of that 3, right now it's dividing, so the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So I'm going to multiply by 3, and I am going to get x is, do I need to flip my sign? Did I multiply by a negative? Nope. So I'm going to keep the same sign. And then 9 times 3 is 27. Okay. So once again, when I go to graph it, whatever answer we get is going to be the middle number here. And then you can start filling in the rest of your number line. So to the right would be 28, 29, and to the left would be 26 and 25. So am I going to have an open or a closed circle? There's no equal to line, so it's going to be open. And then if I want all numbers greater than 27, which way are numbers greater than 27 on the number line? To the right again. So this is what my graph is going to look like. All right, next one. So always move your constant that's on the same side as x. So in this case, I need to move the 2. Right now it's adding 2, so the opposite of adding 2 is subtracting 2. So I'm going to subtract 2 on both sides. My plus 2 minus 2 will cancel. And 6 minus 2 is 4. Keep that inequality sign, and then I'm left with negative 2x on the right side. And my last step to get x by itself, right now the negative 2 and the x are multiplying, so the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I need to divide by this negative 2 on both sides. Now, this is when you guys should be having like a flashing light in your head right now, being like, oh, I just divided by a negative, right? So when you divide by a negative, what's the rule? When you multiply or divide by a negative, you flip your inequality sign. So right now, our inequality sign is the less than symbol. So when I flip it to have the mouth open the other way, it's now going to be greater than. So just don't forget, so you divide by a negative, you need to flip. Okay, so that's just an indicator that you guys should have in your head, okay? So 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2. And then over here, we're just going to be left with x, okay? All right, so whatever answer you get is going to be your center number. And be careful with negatives, okay? So you need to think, where is 0 at if I start with negative 2 right here? And if you guys remember, 0 is going to be down here somewhere. So my numbers are going to get bigger as I go to the right. So my number line, if I add 1 to negative 2, that's negative 1. And if I add 1 to negative 1, that gives me 0. Okay? And then going to the left, you're going to your smaller numbers. So negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3. And negative 3 minus 1 is negative 4. So that's how your guys' number line should look. So now when we go to graph it, open or close circle. Open, because it does not have that equal to line, so it will be open. And then I like to always have x on the left side. So if you want to flip this, you are more than welcome to, but you don't have to. Sometimes people like to read this backwards since the x is on the right side. So this would be x is less than negative 2 if you read it backwards, because the greater than part does not open up towards the x. Okay, so if I were to flip-flop these, x is on the left, negative 2 is on the right, and you always want your gator mouth to chomp up the same number. So since it's open towards the negative 2, I'm going to have it stay open towards the negative 2. Okay, so if you're reading this backwards, you would read it just like this. So x is less than negative 2. So if you want all numbers less than negative 2, all the numbers less than negative 2 are over here to the left, so your arrow should be pointing towards the left. Okay. So let's try a couple more examples, and I'll have you guys try some on your own. Okay, so let's go to number 9. So same thing, always move the constant first. That's on the same side as x. So I need to move the 2. Right now it's subtracting, so the opposite of subtracting 2 is adding 2. So we get 3x is less than 7 plus 2 is 9. And then our last step to get x by itself, right now the 3 and the x are multiplying, so the opposite of multiplying is dividing. And again, I'm always going to have my students double check, did we divide by a negative 3? Nope, so I don't have to flip my inequality sign, so it's going to stay the same. And then 9 divided by 3 is 3. Alright, so let's go ahead and graph it. So 3 is going to be that middle number, and then you can go ahead and start filling in the rest of the number line. So open or close circle at 3. Open, yep, because there's no equal to line. Okay, so it cannot equal 3. And then if I want all numbers less than 3, which way are numbers less than 3? To the left. Alright, next one. So first step is I would subtract the 7 on both sides because that's my constant. That's on the same side as x. So when I subtract 7 on both sides, these cancel. I'm left with x over 8 is greater than 12 minus 7 is 5. And then my last step to get x by itself, right now the x and the 8 are dividing, so the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So I'm going to multiply by that 8 on both sides, and my answer is, I did not multiply by negative, so I'm going to keep my same inequality sign. And then 5 times 8 is 40. All right, so keep your answer that you just got. That's going to be your middle number, and then you can go ahead and start filling in the rest of your number line. And then we need to graph our line. So first off, open or close circle. It is going to be open again because there's no equal to line. And then if I want all numbers greater than 40, all numbers greater than 40 are to the right on the number line. So I'm going to draw in my arrow that goes to the right. All right, one more, then I'll have you guys try 3 on your own. So next one, the first thing I need to do is move that constant over to the other side. That's on the same side as x. So I need to move this minus 10. So since it's subtracting 10, the opposite of subtracting 10 is adding 10. So I'm going to add 10 to both sides. 4 plus 10 is 14. Drop down that inequality sign. And then your minus 10 plus 10 will cancel, so we are left with 7x on the right. And then my last step to get x by itself, I need to move the 7 over to the other side. So right now, since they're multiplying, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So 14 divided by 7 is 2. I'm going to keep my same inequality sign because I did not divide by a negative. And then I'm left with x over here. So my answer is 2 less than x. Now, depending on your teacher, they may want you to always have your variable on the left-hand side. So if you want your variable on the left-hand side, you can flip-flop your numbers. But then the alligator still has to be chomping up the same term. So the alligator's mouth is open towards the x, so I need to make sure my alligator's mouth is still opening up towards the x, okay? So either way, this is saying x is greater than 2. We are going to have an open circle at 2 because it does not have that equal to line. And then since we want all numbers greater than 2, all numbers greater than 2 are to the right of 2 on the number line. So I'm going to shade in my arrow towards the right. Alright, so I want you guys to pause this video and I want you guys to try 12, 13, and 14 on your own and then press play when you're ready. Okay, so go ahead and pause your video and try those 3 problems. Alright, so you guys should be done with 12, 13, and 14 by now, so I'm going to go through these, so check to see if you guys did them correct or not. So on number 12, your guys' first step was to get rid of that 3 by subtracting 3 on both sides, because right now it's adding, so the opposite of adding is subtracting. So then 30 minus 3 gives you 27. Bring down that greater than or equal to sign, and then once your 3's cancel out, you're left with negative 9x. And then your last step to get x by itself, you need to get rid of this negative 9. So since the negative 9 and the x are multiplying, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. And as soon as you got here, okay, you guys just need to start realizing, oh, I just divided by a negative, or oh, I just multiplied by a negative. You guys should know that you need to flip your inequality sign, okay? So we just divided by a negative 9, so before I even start solving everything else, I go ahead and just flip it so that I don't forget, because as soon as I see that I divide, I'm going to flip it right away, okay? And then I can go back to solving it. So 27 divided by negative 9 is negative 3. And then these 9's cancel and I'm left with x. Okay? So this should have been your answer. Negative 3 is less than or equal to x. If your teacher likes you to have the x on the left side, then you would have had x is greater than or equal to negative 3. All right? So negative 3 is going to be your middle number here, and then you can go ahead and start filling in everything else. So one number to the right of -3 would be -2. Then you'll get -1. And then to the left would be -4 and -5. Because remember, you got to think of where 0's at. So if you were to take -3 plus 1, because going to the right, you're going to your bigger numbers. So that's -2. -2 plus 1 is -1. And if you go the opposite way, you're just subtracting 1 every time. Okay? All right, so you should have had a closed circle because there is that equal to line there. So it should be closed. And then if you want all numbers greater than or equal to -3, all numbers greater than -3 are to the right. All right, number 13, your guys' first step was to add 5 on both sides. And you would have been left with 15 is less than x over 4. And then to get that x by itself, you should have multiplied by 4 on both sides, since the x and the 4 are dividing right now, and the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So 15 times 4 gave you 60. I did not multiply by a negative, so I'm going to keep my inequality sign, and then I'm left with x over here. And once again, if you like to flip-flop your inequality, make sure that your x is on the left-hand side. You're more than welcome to do that. Just make sure that you also flip your inequality sign back around. And then when I go to plot this on my number line, 60 was my answer, so that's going to go in the middle. And I can go ahead and start filling in the rest of my numbers on my number line. And at 60, you guys should have had a open circle because there was no equal to line. And then if I want all numbers greater than 60, all numbers greater than 60 are to the right of it. So you should have had an arrow going to the right. All right, and then the last one, number 14. So always move your constant first. That's on the same side as x. So in this case, we needed to move that plus 2. So the opposite of adding 2 is subtracting 2. These cancel because that equals 0, and you are left with x over -3. Bring down that greater than or equal to sign, and then 8 minus 2 is 6. And then your last step to get x by itself, you need to get rid of this -3. So right now it's dividing, so the opposite of dividing is multiplying by -3. And once again, I'm going to stop. I just realized that I multiplied by a negative. So I am going to go ahead and flip my inequality sign so that I don't forget it. So again, as soon as you see that you multiplied or divided by a negative, go ahead and flip that inequality sign before you start solving everything else. Okay? So these cancel. I'm left with x. And then 6 times -3 is -18. Alright, so your answer is going to be your middle number, and then you can go ahead and start filling in the rest. Remember, we are on the negative side, so we want to go the opposite way with our numbers. You should have had a closed circle at -18 because of that equal to line. And then since we want all numbers less than or equal to 18, -18, all numbers less than -18 are to the left. Alright, so those should have been your answers for 12 through 14, so awesome job if you guys got that. If you guys did not get that, it's okay. Just make sure you guys fix your mistakes and you realize what mistakes that you made so that you can't, or you don't make them again. Okay, so your guys' homework is to finish these notes, so make sure you guys have this down on the piece of paper that you were given in class, or just on a separate sheet of paper, okay? But this paper needs to come back to your teacher, as well as you completing these 2 problems. Okay, so for your guys' homework, it's completing the notes page that was on the front and completing these two problems. So again, if you have this paper, these are on there. If you don't have this paper, then just complete these on a separate sheet of paper and bring it back to your teacher, okay? I know these lines are kind of wacky down here at the bottom, but just try your best with graphing them, okay? So if you guys have any questions, please let your teacher know. But as you guys can see, solving two-step equations solving two-step inequalities is the same as solving two-step equations besides just the inequality sign. And when you multiply or divide by a negative, you got to flip that sign. All right, so good luck, guys.